Kang Minho controlled Seoul's underworld with brutal precision. One word from him could end bloodlines. One meeting could shift millions. But tonight, in his bulletproof penthouse, surrounded by guards and guns and power, he was on his knees, begging. His 3-month-old son had been screaming for 6 hours straight, and the most powerful man in the city couldn't make it stop. 4 nannies quit. 6 formulas failed. Every expert told him his son was fine. He wasn't fine. He was dying, and Minho was helpless until a black woman in a women's shelter did what all his money couldn't. She held his son to her chest, hummed something ancient and beautiful, and breastfed him back to life. What Minho didn't know, saving his son would cost him everything. His empire, his control, his heart. The penthouse overlooking Seoul's Gangnam district had never heard a sound like this before. Not the crack of gunfire during the territory wars. Not the screams of traitors being interrogated in the sublevels. Not even the thunderous roar of explosions that marked the end of the Park dynasty 3 years ago. No, this sound was far more devastating. A baby's cry. Kang Minho stood in the centre of his fortress, a man who'd built an empire on calculated violence and ice-cold precision, completely undone by 8 pounds of furious infant. His custom-tailored Tom Ford suit, charcoal grey, perfectly pressed, was now wrinkled beyond recognition. His usually immaculate black hair fell across his forehead in damp, exhausted strands. The dark circles carved beneath his sharp cheekbones made him look less like a MAFIA king and more like a man on the edge of collapse. "Sir, perhaps we should try the Swedish formula again," his head of security, Ji-soo, suggested from the doorway, her usually steady voice tight with concern. Minho didn't answer. He couldn't. His jaw was clenched so hard his teeth ached as he bounced the screaming infant against his shoulder with mechanical, desperate movements. The baby, his son, Ji-hoon, had been crying for 6 hours straight. 6 hours. 4 nannies had quit in the past 2 weeks. The paediatrician had run every test imaginable. Everything came back normal. Healthy baby. No medical explanation, just endless, soul-destroying crying that was slowly dismantling Minho's legendary control piece by piece. "Get out!" Minho rasped. Ji-soo hesitated. "Sir!" "Out!" She fled. Minho stumbled to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city he controlled through fear and strategic brutality. His reflection stared back at him, a ghost of the man who'd consolidated 5 rival territories, who'd negotiated billion-dollar weapons deals without flinching, who'd personally eliminated the previous kingpin with his bare hands. That man was gone, destroyed by an infant who wouldn't stop crying. "What do you want from me?" Minho whispered hoarsely to the red-faced baby. "I've given you everything. The best doctors, the most expensive equipment, round-the-clock care. What else is there?" Ji-hoon's only answer was another piercing wail that seemed to physically strike Minho's chest. The baby was 3 months old. His mother, Yuri, daughter of a rival organisation, had died during an emergency caesarean. Her last words a curse on Minho's name. The marriage had been strategic, loveless, doomed from the start. She'd wanted power, he'd wanted consolidation. Neither had wanted a child. But Ji-hoon existed, and Minho, despite everything he was, couldn't abandon his own blood, even if that blood was currently screaming loud enough to shatter his legendary composure. His phone buzzed, a text from his underboss. "The council meeting is in 2 hours. They're questioning your leadership. You need to be there." Minho looked at the phone, then at the screaming baby, then back at the phone. For the first time in his ruthless career, he made an irrational decision. He grabbed his car keys. The Han River Women's Shelter wasn't on any map connected to Minho's world. It existed in the cracks, a safe house for women fleeing violence, funded anonymously by corporate donations that couldn't be traced. Minho knew about it only because his intelligence network tracked everything in his territory, even the invisible spaces. He'd never paid it any attention before, until tonight, when desperation turned him into something he'd never been, a man asking for help. He parked his black Bentley in the shadows across the street, Jihoon still screaming in the custom car seat. Through the shelter's lit windows, he could see women moving, some young, some old, all carrying the weight of survival on their shoulders, and then he saw her. She was standing in the communal kitchen, visible through the window, her back to him as she stirred something in a large pot. She was tall, almost 6 feet, with dark skin that seemed to absorb and reflect the warm kitchen light simultaneously. Her hair was wrapped in a vibrant blue and gold head wrap, and her movements had a calm, rhythmic quality that was hypnotic even from a distance. She turned slightly, laughing at something someone said, and Minho's breath caught. She was stunning, not in the delicate, manufactured way of the women in his world, but with a raw, earthy beauty that seemed to radiate strength. Her smile was wide and genuine, transforming her entire face into something that looked like sunlight. Jihoon's crying intensified, pulling Minho back to reality. He grabbed the baby, not caring about protocol or appearances, and strode across the street. He kicked the shelter door open with more force than necessary. Every woman inside froze. Minho stood in the doorway, 6'2" of lethal elegance, holding a screaming infant, his expensive clothes and cold eyes completely incongruous with the worn, warm space. "I need help," he said, his voice cutting through Jihoon's cries like a blade. "Now!" The women scattered, terrified, all except one. She stepped forward, this beautiful woman from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her dark eyes assessed him with zero fear, only calm, professional evaluation. "You can't be here," she said. Her Korean was accented, musical, lilting. Nigerian, Minho's brain supplied automatically. "This is a women's shelter. Men aren't allowed." "My son won't stop crying," Minho said flatly. "I've tried everything. I'll pay anything." "Money doesn't fix crying babies," she replied, moving closer. Her gaze shifted to Jihoon, and something in her expression softened. "How long has he been like this?" 6 hours, sometimes longer. "When did he last eat?" "He won't eat. He refuses the bottle. Every formula, every temperature, every not formula," she interrupted gently. "Breast milk." Minho's jaw tightened. "His mother is dead." "Donor milk. Imported from Switzerland, Japan, Germany. He rejects it all." She stepped closer, and Minho caught her scent, something warm and spiced, completely foreign to his sterile world. She reached out, and before he could stop her, she placed her hand on Jihoon's back. The crying didn't stop immediately, but it changed, lessened in intensity, shifted to a different pitch. "He's not sick," she said quietly, her hand moving in slow, firm circles. "He's starving for connection. Formula isn't what he needs. He needs a heartbeat, warmth, a human anchor. I hold him constantly." "Do you?" Her eyes met his, challenging. "Or do you carry him while your mind is calculating territory disputes and power plays?" Babies feel that distance. They feel everything. Welcome back, besties. This is Afro-Korean Diary, and honey, buckle up because this story is about to take you on a ride you'll never forget. If you're ready for danger, obsession, and a love story that'll have your heart racing, you're exactly where you need to be. Drop that like, share with your girls, and subscribe because, trust me, you need to see what happens next. And yes, kindly tell me where you are watching from. Minho's mouth opened, then closed. No one spoke to him this way. No one dared. Before he could respond, she made a decision. She turned to the other women, speaking rapidly in English. I'm taking him to the private room. No one disturb us. She looked back at Minho. You. Come with me. Leave your gun at the door. I'm not. You have a gun. Shoulder holster. Left side. I can see the outline. Leave it or leave entirely. Minho stared at her for a long, dangerous moment. Then, incredibly, he reached inside his jacket and placed his Glock on the entrance table. Follow me, she said. The private room was small, just a rocking chair, a changing table, and a soft mat on the floor. She closed the door behind them and gestured to the chair. Sit. Minho sat, still holding the crying Jihoon. I'm going to do something that will seem inappropriate, she said, her voice steady and professional. But it's the only thing that will work. I'm going to feed him directly. Do you consent? Minho's brain short-circuited. I have a 6-month-old daughter, she said simply. She's sleeping in the next room. I'm still nursing. Your son needs what only a nursing mother can provide, not just milk, but the act of being held, skin to skin, by someone whose body is designed to comfort infants. I don't even know your name. Sandra, she said. Sandra Obi. And you're Kang Minho, though you probably didn't expect me to know that. His eyes narrowed. You know who I am. Everyone in this shelter knows who controls this territory. We stay invisible because it keeps us safe. Now, do you consent or not? Because your son is suffering. Minho looked down at Jihoon's red, scrunched face, at his tiny fists trembling with effort, and felt something crack in his chest. Yes. Sandra took the baby with confident, gentle hands, settled into the rocking chair, and with practiced ease adjusted her clothing. Within seconds, Jihoon was latched and feeding, his cries stopping so abruptly it felt like a miracle. The silence was devastating. Minho stared, unable to look away. His son, his screaming, inconsolable son, was completely peaceful, making small, satisfied sounds as he fed. Sandra hummed something low and melodic, a song in a language Minho didn't recognize, and rocked gently. How? Minho's voice came out broken. How did you do that? I didn't do anything extraordinary, Sandra said softly, her eyes on Jihoon. I just gave him what he was asking for. Babies don't have complex needs. They just need to feel safe. Minho lowered himself to the floor, his expensive suit forgotten, and watched his son's face transform from anguish to contentment. For the first time in months, he felt the crushing weight on his chest ease slightly. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, the words escaping before he could stop them. I know how to run an empire. I know how to eliminate threats. I don't know how to be this. Sandra looked at him, and her eyes held no judgment, only understanding. Being a father isn't about what you know. It's about who you're willing to become. Something shifted in the room. Minho felt it. A dangerous, intoxicating pull toward this woman who'd done the impossible with simple competence and compassion. I need you, he said. Her eyes widened slightly. Excuse me. To help him, to teach me. Name your price. Mr. Kang. Anything. A house, money, citizenship if you need it, protection, whatever you... I'm not. For sale. Sandra interrupted, her voice firm but not harsh. And neither is my care. Then, what do you want? She was quiet for a long moment, looking down at the baby who was now drifting to sleep, completely satisfied. When she spoke, her voice was careful. I want my daughter to grow up safe. I want to finish my nursing degree. I want to stop running from immigration enforcement because my asylum case is stuck in legal hell. She met his eyes. I want what you can't actually buy. A future. Minho's mind, that calculating machine that had built an empire, immediately began mapping solutions. I can give you all of that, legally, permanently, but I need you to help me with him. I need you to... live in your home, nurse your son, become part of your dangerous world. Sandra shook her head. You're asking me to trade one kind of risk for another. I'm asking you to save my son's life, Minho said quietly, because without you, I don't know if he'll survive my incompetence. The raw honesty in his voice seemed to catch her off guard. She studied his face, this cold, dangerous man now stripped to his most vulnerable core. 1 month, she finally said. Trial period. You provide legal documentation for my asylum case. You ensure my daughter's safety. You pay for my degree. And I help stabilize Jihoon. After 1 month, we reassess. Those are my terms. Done. Minho said immediately, I'm not finished. You don't touch me. You don't order me. You don't treat me like property. I'm a professional, not a possession. Understood. Understood. Sandra looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms, then back at the Mafia king sitting on the floor of a women's shelter and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Neither of them knew that this decision would change everything. Their lives, their hearts, and the entire power structure of Seoul's underworld. But they would learn, starting tomorrow. Sandra stood in the marble foyer of Minho's penthouse fortress, her 6-month-old daughter Zara, strapped to her chest in a worn cloth carrier, and felt the weight of her decision settle like concrete in her stomach. The space was obscene, 15-foot ceilings, abstract art that probably cost more than entire villages, floor-to-ceiling bulletproof windows overlooking a city that glittered like scattered diamonds. Everything was black, white and chrome, cold, sterile, designed to intimidate. Her daughter made a small, uncomfortable sound. I know, baby girl, Sandra whispered in Igbo, kissing Zara's forehead. This place has no soul, but we're going to survive it. Minho appeared from a hallway, Jihoon finally sleeping in his arms. He'd changed into simple black clothes, but even casual, he radiated lethal elegance. His eyes found Sandra immediately, and something flickered in their dark depths. Relief, maybe, or something more. Complicated. Your rooms are in the East Wing, he said. Private entrance, full kitchen, security system you control. You'll have complete autonomy. Where's Jihoon's nursery? West Wing, opposite side of the penthouse. Sandra frowned. That's too far. If he wakes distressed, I need to reach him quickly. Move his nursery adjacent to my rooms. Minho's jaw tightened, the look of a man unused to being countermanded. The West Wing nursery has been outfitted with... I don't care what it has. Babies don't need expensive equipment. They need proximity to their caregiver. Move it, or this arrangement ends now. For 5 long seconds, they stared at each other. A battle of wills between empire and maternal instinct. Minho broke first. It'll be moved by tonight. Good. Sandra adjusted Zara's carrier. Now, show me the kitchen. I need to prepare proper food, not whatever frozen imported nonsense you've been surviving on. Something almost like a smile ghosted across Minho's face. You're very bossy for someone who arrived an hour ago. You're very accustomed to fear-based compliance for someone who needs help. Sandra countered. I don't fear you, Mr. Kang. That's why this will work. The almost smile vanished, replaced by something intense and unreadable. You should fear me. Why? Will you hurt your son's only source of comfort? Will you destroy the one person keeping him alive? Sandra stepped closer, close enough to smell his expensive cologne mixed with baby formula and exhaustion. You're not used to needing people. But you need me. That makes me untouchable. Minho's eyes darkened with something that wasn't anger, something far more dangerous. Don't mistake necessity for safety, Sandra. Don't mistake my compassion for weakness, Minho. They stood inches apart, Jihoon sleeping between them like a small, breathing bridge, until Zara made another fussy sound that broke the tension. Kitchen, Sandra said firmly. Now. This time, Minho led the way. 3 days later, The council meeting Minho sat at the head of the obsidian conference table in his underground war room, surrounded by the 5 underbosses who controlled Seoul's criminal infrastructure. These men had sworn loyalty, but loyalty in their world was as reliable as morning mist, and they smelled blood. "You missed the Busan negotiation," Kim Dae-jung said, his voice deceptively casual. "A negotiation that cost us 3 million in lost revenue because our leader was indisposed."
"Family emergency," Minho replied, his tone flat and dangerous. "Family?" Park Sung-min laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "The great Kang Minho, brought low by a baby. How poetic." "Watch your tone," Jisoo warned from her position by the door, her hand resting on her concealed weapon. "Or what?" Sung-min leaned forward.
"We all know the truth. You're distracted, weakened. That child is a liability you can't afford." Minho's hand, resting on the table, curled into a fist. "My son is none of your concern. He is when your situation makes you unreliable." Dae-jung slid a folder across the table. "The Yakuza are circling. The Russians smell opportunity. Your ex-wife's family is filing for custody, claiming you're an unfit father. They want the child as leverage." Minho opened the folder. Legal documents, photographs, intelligence reports showing his enemies consolidating. Yuri's family thinks they can take Jihoon and use him to claim legitimacy over my territories. Minho said slowly, "They're wrong." "Are they?" Sung-min challenged. "Because from where we sit, you're barely holding it together. You've hired some foreign woman to play nursemaid." "Careful," Minho interrupted, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Very careful how you finish that sentence." Sung-min's eyes glittered with malice. "We did background on her. Sandra Obi, Nigerian refugee, asylum case rejected twice, living illegally in a women's shelter with her bastard daughter. No family, no connections, no protection." He smiled. "Very vulnerable." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Minho stood slowly, and every man at the table tensed. "If anyone touches her or her daughter, I will personally remove your spine through your throat. Am I perfectly clear?" "So it's true," Dae-jung said quietly. "You're compromised. You've developed feelings for this woman." "I've developed an appreciation for competence," Minho corrected coldly. "Something increasingly rare in this room." "Then prove it," Sung-min challenged. "The custody hearing is in 2 days. Yuri's family has political connections, expensive lawyers, and a sympathetic narrative. Tragic mother dies, dangerous criminal father neglects infant. They'll take Jihoon, and with him, your legitimacy, unless—" He paused meaningfully. "Unless you eliminate the problem." "Meaning? Send the child away, disappear him, claim he died, remove the leverage entirely." The room went silent. Minho looked at each man in turn, memorizing faces, cataloguing betrayals. "You're suggesting I fake my son's death, abandon him to preserve power, to preserve the empire," Dae-jung corrected. "The empire that feeds all of us." Minho smiled, a terrible, cold expression that made even hardened killers flinch. "Gentlemen, I appreciate your concern, but I'll handle the custody hearing my way." Meeting adjourned. As they filed out, Jisoo approached. "Sir, they're right about one thing. Yuri's family has built a strong case. Without solid evidence of Jihoon's stability—" "Get me the best family lawyer in Seoul," Minho interrupted. "And increase security on Sandra and her daughter. Triple shifts. I want eyes on them constantly." "You think the council will move against her?" "I think desperate men do desperate things." His eyes hardened. "And I think I need to have a conversation with Sandra about what she's walked into." That night, Sandra was in the relocated nursery, rocking Jihoon after his evening feeding, when Minho entered. It was past midnight. He looked exhausted, the careful mask he wore beginning to crack. "He's gaining weight," Sandra said softly, not looking up. 2 pounds in 3 days. The pediatrician was shocked. "Because of you. Because of consistent nutrition and emotional security." She finally met his eyes. "What happened today? How did you—" "You're moving differently, heavier, like you're carrying something toxic." Sandra gently placed the sleeping Jihoon in his crib, then turned to face Minho fully. What happened? Minho was silent for a long moment, studying this woman who read him so easily. "There's a custody hearing. My late wife's family wants Jihoon. They'll use him as leverage against my organisation. Will they win? Not if I can prove he's thriving, that he's in a stable, healthy environment." Sandra crossed her arms. "You want me to testify?" "Yes. As what? Your employee? Your son's wet nurse? What exactly do I tell the court about why I'm here?" "The truth. That you're providing essential care that's saving his life. And when they investigate me, when they discover I'm an illegal immigrant with a rejected asylum case, when your enemies use me to prove you're so desperate you hired someone with no legal standing." Sandra's voice remained calm, but her eyes flashed. "I'm not a liability you can hide, Minho. I'm a weapon they'll use against you. Then we fix your legal status, immediately. It's not that simple. It is, if you marry me." The words hung in the air like a detonation. Sandra stared at him. "Excuse me." Minho stepped closer, his expression intense. "Marriage grants immediate legal residency. It provides legitimacy to your presence in Jihoon's life. It makes you untouchable in court. It solves everything. It solves your problems," Sandra corrected, her voice rising slightly. "It turns me into property, a legal shield. No, it turns you into family, protected, permanent. I am not marrying a mafia boss for paperwork. Then marry me because my son will die without you." Minho's control finally shattered, his voice raw. "Because in 3 days, you've done what an army of experts couldn't. Because when I watch you with him, I see something I thought I'd killed in myself, hope. Because I am terrified that if they take him, I'll lose the only good thing I've ever created." Sandra's breath caught. She'd expected cold, calculation. Not this, not vulnerability so naked it hurt to witness. "You don't love me," she said quietly. "No," Minho agreed. "But I respect you. I trust you. And in my world, that's rarer than love." "What about what I want? What about Zara's father? You're here because you're running from something. No family, no support system, living in a shelter. I'm offering you a way to stop running." His eyes held hers. "And Zara's father, if he cared, he'd be here." The painful truth of that statement landed like a physical blow. Sandra turned away, looking at the sleeping Jihoon. "This is insane. Yes, I don't even like you. I don't like most people. You're a criminal." "I'm aware." She laughed, a short, desperate sound. "If I say yes, it's a real marriage, legal, binding, not some business arrangement where you keep mistresses and I stay in my corner. You want me to protect your son. Then you respect me as an equal partner. Done. And Zara is legally adopted as your daughter. Same rights, same inheritance, same protection as Jihoon." Minho didn't even hesitate. "Done." Sandra turned back to face him, her dark eyes searching his for any sign of deception. "Why do I feel like I'm making a deal with the devil?" "Because you probably are," Minho said. "But I'm a devil who keeps his promises." She extended her hand. 3 months, trial marriage. If it doesn't work, we divorce and you maintain my legal status and Zara's adoption regardless. He took her hand, his grip warm and firm. 3 months. Neither of them knew that they wouldn't make it 3 weeks before everything exploded. The custody hearing, 5 days later. The courtroom was packed with lawyers, social workers, and thinly veiled criminals from both sides. Yuri's family, the wealthy, connected young family, sat on one side, their grief performative and perfectly staged. Minho sat on the other, Sandra beside him, both dressed immaculately. She wore a deep blue traditional Korean hanbok that Minho had commissioned, respecting the court while maintaining her dignity. Her hair was wrapped elegantly, and she radiated calm competence. The young family's lawyer attacked immediately. "Mr. Kang, you expect this court to believe that your son, a child who lost his mother at birth, is thriving in the care of an unmarried mafia boss and his foreign employee?" "She's my wife," Minho said calmly. "We married 4 days ago, and yes, our son is thriving." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The lawyer's expression soured. "A convenient marriage, suspiciously timed. Love is rarely convenient," Sandra interjected, her accented Korean clear and strong. "But commitment is deliberate. I married Kang Minho because I love his son, and because I saw a man willing to change his entire world to be the father Ji-hoon deserves." "You're a Nigerian immigrant with a rejected asylum case. I'm a registered nurse with specialised training in infant care, currently enrolled in Seoul National University's Advanced Pediatric Program," Sandra corrected. "My immigration status is resolved through my marriage, and I have saved Ji-hoon's life through consistent, evidence-based care that your client's wealth couldn't provide." She stood, and the entire courtroom seemed to lean forward. Ji-hoon was failing to thrive. He'd been through 6 nannies, multiple formula changes, and was severely dehydrated. Within 48 hours of my care, he began gaining weight. Within a week, he was developmentally on track. She pulled out a folder. "I have pediatric records, weight charts, and developmental assessments showing dramatic improvement. The young family wants him. Ask them how many hours they've spent with him. Ask them if they know he's lactose sensitive. Ask them why they waited 3 months to suddenly care." The young lawyer stammered, trying to regain control. "This is highly irregular." "What's irregular?" Minho said, standing beside his wife. "Is a family using a child as a political tool. Your clients don't want my son. They want leverage. I'm offering Ji-hoon stability, love, and 2 parents committed to his well-being. They're offering wealth and a boarding school in Switzerland." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, raised her hand for silence. "I'll review the medical records and make my determination. Court adjourned until tomorrow." That night, the betrayal. Sandra was giving Ji-hoon his late feeding when the power went out. Complete, absolute darkness. Her nurse training kicked in immediately. She grabbed Ji-hoon, still latched, and moved away from the windows. In the adjacent room, Zara began to cry. "Minho!" Sandra called out, keeping her voice steady. Footsteps, too many, too fast, thundered through the penthouse. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in blood red. 3 men in tactical gear burst through the nursery door, not external enemies, Minho's own security team. "Sungmin sends his regards," one said, raising his weapon toward Sandra. She didn't hesitate. She shielded Ji-hoon with her body, spun toward Zara's room, and kicked the door shut behind her with enough force to activate the magnetic lock she'd installed herself. A security measure Minho didn't even know about. The men fired. Bullets slammed into the reinforced door, but didn't penetrate. Sandra grabbed Zara from her crib, pressed both babies against her chest, and dropped to the floor in the corner where the walls were thickest. Her heart hammered, but her hands stayed steady. "Mama's got you," she whispered in Igbo to both infants. "Mama won't let anything happen to you." Outside, she heard more gunfire, different weapons. Minho's voice, cold and lethal, barking orders. The siege lasted 7 minutes. It felt like 7 hours. When the door finally opened, it was Minho, covered in blood that wasn't his. eyes wild until they found her. He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to his knees, and pulled all 3 of them into his arms with desperate force. "Are you hurt?" His hands frantically checked Sandra, then both babies. "Did they touch you?" "We're fine. The door held." Sandra's voice shook slightly. "Your own men. They..." "Dead," Minho said flatly. "All of them. Sungmin tried to stage a coup, thought killing you would force me to choose between revenge and empire." His hands cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I chose you. I chose this. I burned it all down for you. Minho, I love you," he said. The words raw and unpracticed. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you first touched my son and stopped his crying. Maybe when you demanded I move his nursery. Maybe when you stood in that courtroom and defended us. But I love you, and I will destroy anyone who threatens you." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. "You're insane." "Yes, this life is impossible. Yes, I should take my daughter and run, but you won't." His thumb brushed away her tears. "Because you love me too." And God help her, she did. She kissed him, fierce and desperate and real, while both babies made small, oblivious sounds between them. When they broke apart, Sandra pressed her forehead to his. "If we do this, if I stay, things change. No more council, no more empire built on fear. We build something new, together. What are you suggesting? Legitimize it. Turn your network into legal businesses. Use your power to protect people instead of exploiting them." Her eyes held his. "Be the man Jihoon and Zara need. Be the man I know you can become." Minho was silent for a long moment. Everything she was asking meant dismantling everything he'd built, betraying the code he'd lived by, becoming vulnerable. He looked at his son, sleeping peacefully against Sandra's chest, at her daughter, his daughter now, watching him with wide, curious eyes, at this woman who'd walked into his fortress and conquered it without firing a shot. "Okay," he said. "Okay, we'll build something new." 2 years later, the community centre in Gangnam's south side was nothing like Minho's old fortress. It was warm, bright, filled with children's laughter and the smell of Sandra's cooking. The Kang Foundation, specialising in refugee support and maternal health, operated from the ground floor. Legal businesses that employed former criminals operated on the second. Family housing occupied the third. Minho stood in his office, smaller, simpler, but somehow fuller, watching through the window as Sandra conducted a prenatal class for immigrant mothers. She was visibly pregnant with their 3rd child, glowing and confident. Jihoon, now 2.5, played with Zara in the corner, both speaking a fluid mix of Korean, English, and Igbo. "Boss, sorry, Mr. Kang," Jisoo corrected herself, appearing in the doorway. "The judge approved the final adoption for the 3 kids from the shelter. They'll be placed with families by month's end." Good." Minho smiled, something he did regularly now, a shock to everyone who'd known him before. "And the council. What's left of it is negotiating legitimate contracts. Daejung actually started a construction company, legal, unionised, profitable. Progress. It's weird," Jisoo admitted. "But good weird." Minho turned from the window to face his former head of security, now his foundation's director of operations. "You miss the old days?" "God, no. I sleep now." She grinned. "Plus, your wife terrifies me more than you ever did." As if summoned, Sandra appeared, Jihoon on her hip. "Minho, your son wants to show you something important." Jihoon held up a crude crayon drawing, 3 stick figures, one very tall, one with a round belly, one tiny, holding hands under a yellow sun. "Is family," Jihoon announced proudly, in his mixed language way. Minho took the drawing with reverent care, then pulled his wife and son into his arms. "Yes," he said quietly, "it's family." Sandra kissed his cheek. Who would have thought? The ruthless Kang Minho, brought to his knees by a crying baby, and by the woman who knew how to quiet him, Minho added, his hand resting on her pregnant belly. You didn't just save my son. You saved me. We saved each other, Sandra corrected. That's what family does. Through the window, Seoul glittered, no longer a city of territories and violence, but a home full of possibility and second chances. The empire of fear had fallen. The empire of love had risen in its place, and it all began with one woman's courage to reach out and one man's courage to accept her hand. We've reached the end, besties. Did this story have your heart racing? Did that action, that danger, that protection have you screaming? Drop a comment with your favourite moment. If you loved this intense, action-packed romance, smash that like button, share with everyone who loves dangerous men and fearless women, and subscribe for more addictive stories. What do you want next? More action? More steamy moments? Let me know. Until next time, besties, stay dangerous, stay loved.